Hi, I'm Maurice Jones, President of Graceland Ministries. Today, we'll be talking about William Lane Craig and his 6, you want to call them presuppositions or 6 foundations or false assumptions, whatever you want to call them. You get the pick, okay? But today, Dr. William Lane Craig, he follows 6 things, okay? So when you're dealing with Dr. Craig, you need to keep these 6 things in mind, okay? Because Dr. Craig pretends to act as though he's objective and that he's searching for truth. Okay, he says things like, well, I was studying time for 13 years, or for the last 2 years I started studying man, and blah, blah, blah. And it gets you to think, oh, this guy is really out there trying to, find objective truth, and he's really trying to help us. But in reality, he's just trying to build upon his own self-discovery, or the things that he has put into place, his own self-revelation, not the Word of God. He's like Karl Barth and Rudolf Bultmann and all those other guys out there that have their own self-revelation. And so don't be tricked by him saying things like, I've studied this for this, cause, and that he's helping you as a Christian. He's not. What he's trying to do is he's trying to build upon these 6 things, or these 6 presuppositions. The first thing is this. The first thing is that he believes in what we call middle knowledge. Middle knowledge is a perspective. It's a perspective like Calvinism or Arminianism or like Thomism, okay? But it's a perspective on a scale. And it's called middle knowledge because it's in the middle, but depending on what you mean by middle, because it's in between Calvinism and process theology. Now, if you move from process theology back to Calvinism, then yes, it's in the middle. If you move from Calvinism towards process theology, then Thomism is in the middle, really. But he has this perspective that he calls middle knowledge. It's the idea that God has additional foreknowledge, okay? God not only knows, he has natural knowledge, which means he knows, the infeasible worlds, okay? And he has middle knowledge or special knowledge, which means he knows what you would do, okay? He knows your individual essence before you were born, okay? And then God decrees, and then God has free knowledge because God has created an actual world, okay, of counterfactuals in this world. So he has what we call middle knowledge. So moving on. The second thing he believes in is called the A theory of time. The A theory of time. The A theory of time. To be more exact, he believes in something called presentism. Okay? And the A theory of time is different from the B theory of time. Okay, like Calvinism and Arminianism, they hold to the B theory of time. Okay, earlier than, later than. Okay, the Thomists, they hold to the implicit B theory of time. All right, so he holds to the A theory, meaning that only the present is real, or presentism. Only the present is real for Craig. So if there's a plane moving in at 6:50 and your time for takeoff is 7 o'clock and you're sitting at an airport and that plane takes off, okay, and now it's 7:10, to Craig, that plane arriving is false. It hasn't gotten there yet. That plane taking off, okay, it's determined, it's past, it's false. So what's really true is the present. So he follows the A theory of time, which is the idea that you have a past, present, and future. Okay, you don't have a later than, and you don't have a earlier than, and everything doesn't happen at the same time. But rather, you do have 3 distinct parts to the human time strand, which is the past, the present, and the future. It's just that the present is always real for Dr. Craig. All right, moving on. Number 3, he believes in what I call his view of theism, his Christian view of theism. Okay, now his view of theism is the idea that God is not, if you believe in the B theory of time, then you have to say God is infinite or an actual infinite. But since you believe in the A theory of time, since he believes in the A theory of time, he says things like God is timeless and God is temporal. So God sans creation is timeless. God with creation is temporal. Okay. So what does that mean? Well, what he's trying to say is that God is not an actual infinite. Because if God was an actual infinite, God cannot be in a temporal world. You can't put an infinite amount of books into a finite or temporal library. It's just not going to work. So he says God is timeless and God is temporal. God is timeless sans creation. God is temporal with creation. So that's a nice way of saying that God is not infinite. Okay. And to say he's temporal is a nice way of saying God is not finite. Because remember, Graceland Ministries is going to tell you this. Other people aren't. Remember, Craig, he wants to take what? The middle position. Okay, he wants to sit there. That's why he wants to be on the atheist side when it comes to the Big Bang Theory. But then he wants to say God created the world on the Christian side. He always wants to be in the middle. Okay, that's why he can say that God is not infinite. Okay, and please the process guys. But then he can say, hey, God is not finite. Okay, as he attacks the open theist guys. So remember, he tries to set things up so that he would never lose. He tries to have his cake and eat it too. Okay, now, number 4 is what I call his view of creation. His view of creation. That is, Dr. Craig believes in the idea of a Big Bang Theory. Okay, so now watch this. He has his cake and he eats it too. Okay, he believes in the Big Bang Theory. Okay, but at the same time, he believes in creatio ex nihilo. That God created a world out of nothing. And so he tries to, attach that to Psalms 148 and to the book of Peter. So once again, he tries to have his cake and eat it as well. He sides with the evolutionists and says, hey, there's no 6 days of creation. There's the Big Bang Theory. But then he knows that Calvinist theologians, Armenian theologians, and the like, and Thomas and all, because they believe in the B theory time and the implicit B theory time, they can't hold to creatio ex nihilo. So that's how he blackmails Christian theists. Okay, like, hey, I'm more of a Christian than you because I believe in creatio ex nihilo. Your view of time doesn't hold to that. But at the same time, he wants to come back to the atheists and say, hey, I believe in the Big Bang Theory, and so on and so on. Which leads us to number 5. Number 5 is going to be his view of the Bible. Dr. Craig's view of the Bible. Okay? Now, he doesn't have, watch this now. Because he believes in middle knowledge. Okay, remember, like I said, if you move from process theology to Calvinism, then middle knowledge or Molinism is in the middle. If you move from Calvinism towards process theology, then Thomism is in the middle. Now, to a Thomist, they believe in the idea when it comes to foreknowledge that God, can look down the corridors of time and see the future. Okay? Now, Dr. Craig doesn't believe that. He believes he's a conceptualist. He believes the idea that God is a transcendent mind and God's foreknowledge is innate and therefore God doesn't see anything. As a matter of fact, he doesn't like any anthropomorphisms. Okay? If you say God has, eyes or hands or whatever, then he gets upset. And that's why his view of the Bible, he doesn't have much respect for the Old Testament. Okay, you don't even see him arguing for the Trinity in the Old Testament. He doesn't like theophanies. Okay, so he's against all anthropomorphisms, and he's against theophanies, and so his view of the Old Testament is very weak. Okay, and he doesn't believe in 6-day creation. Okay, now when he gets to the New Testament, that's what he wants to hold to. He believes in the Christological assertion. He believes in John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word is with God, the Word was God. But he's going to have a hard time, talking about Daniel 7:13. I love to see him talk about that. I love to see how he kind of cringes when he has to talk about Jesus being the coming Messiah, because he can't explain that. Okay, because his Old Testament is very weak. Okay, and so he wants to believe in the resurrection, and he wants to believe in the New Testament. Now, to move on, lastly, we're going to move to what we call, and this is what Dr. Craig is working on now. It's called a philosophical theological system. Okay? He holds to this philosophical theological system. Now, most people, most traditional theologians, they always put theology first. Okay, but then the process guys came along and said, hey, theology, you got to do theology before you can do theology. So it's kind of like circular. So now, Dr. Craig and others, they just come out and just say, hey, we're going to do philosophy first and then theology second. So because he has this philosophical theological system, okay, he's able to put all these things, middle knowledge, presentism, theism, Big Bang Theory, the lack of theophanies, all of these things he can put in front of the Bible. Because what matters is, he wants Christians to be philosophical and then, you become theological later. But think about it. Philosophy is circular too. You can't start with philosophy no more than you can start with theology. Okay? So, these are the 6 things that Dr. Craig holds to. So whenever he's talking about Adam and Eve, he's here. He's here. Because he has this mytho view of the Old Testament history, man. This guy goes on and says things like, Jesus and Paul seem to believe in, a historical Adam and blah, 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 a Garden of Eden and blah, blah, blah. But he has his own philosophy, so he's going to say, hey, it doesn't happen. So anyway, to cut this video short, here's what we got. Remember, when you're dealing with Dr. Craig, look for these 6 things. This is how he defeats people. But these things are all shaky. They're all suspect. And when we make our other videos on Dr. Craig, you're going to see how these things don't work and how they're pretty much meaningless or baseless because, they're not biblical. Middle knowledge. You can get middle knowledge in the Old Testament up to the cross. After the cross, you're not going to get it very much. You can try to stretch it to say that, take the way of escape when the temptation comes. Okay? Presentism, what do you mean? That only the present is real. So there's no, Jesus says before Abraham was, I am. Come on. Okay, what God says I'm going to be Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. He's not just the ego and me, the I am. God is timeless and temporal. Where do you read that from? Book of Hebrews says that God is. Book of Psalms chapter 90 verse 2 says God is from everlasting to everlasting. Of course, Isaiah 57:15 says God inhabits eternity. This view of creation, the Big Bang Theory, come on. I found the Word of God. Moses wrote the book of Genesis, Moses wrote Exodus, and he says the world was created in 6 days. Come on. So all of these things are just little philosophical tools that he likes to play with and try to mesmerize people and things of that sort. So just be on alert for these things. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed this content and would like to see more from Graceland Ministries, please subscribe, share, and support us financially online using the links in the description.